eviction papers folded tight in his coat pocket, Walter Reyes climbed the courthouse steps in Fergus County. 1,500 acres, 3 generations of his wife's family before him, all of it hanging on a single ruling scheduled for that Tuesday morning. Nobody in that room expected what came next. The bank's own attorney stopped cold, mid-argument. Judge Patricia Vance held up one hand, told the room to wait, and read the document in front of her twice without a word. What stopped her cold? Drop your guess in the comments, and tell me where you're watching from today. Central Montana holds Fergus County against rolling grassland, cattle country broken up by coulées and the occasional line of cottonwoods. Walter Reyes and his wife Donna ran that ranch together since 1995, 1,500 acres of grazing land. A cow-calf operation Donna's grandfather had started generations back. August of 2022 took Donna without warning. An aneurysm while loading hay, gone before the ambulance made it out from Lewistown. Walter was 63 that summer. His grandson Micah, just 10, had been spending the season on the ranch with them. That autumn brought $265,000 through Donna's life insurance, money meant to clear every outstanding debt on the ranch. Straight to Big Sky Agricultural Bank, Walter wired the full amount, the same institution holding the ranch's mortgage, since the early 2000s zero balance was the outcome he expected. It wasn't what he got. One evening that winter, Walter sat at the kitchen table reviewing loan statements, 5 months after the payment cleared. A figure near the bottom caught his attention. $72,000 had disappeared into charges he'd never approved, default penalties, legal processing fees, a line labeled portfolio review charge, tucked into a servicing addendum from paperwork he barely remembered signing. His son-in-law worked as an ag lending consultant out of Billings, and he offered to drive up one weekend, spreading the statements across that same kitchen table. "This fee structure doesn't hold up," he said, running his finger down the page. "There's also a federal ranching disaster relief measure active for Fergus County. You should qualify without any trouble." Big Sky had said nothing about it, not a single word. Walter called the bank himself that Thursday. A representative in the Special Assets Division told him relief programs were entirely the borrower's responsibility to pursue. The bank held no obligation to inform anyone. His tone made it clear he'd said it many times before. Nothing more came from that call. It should have closed the matter for good. Instead, it pushed Walter toward a decision that would unravel far more than a handful of fees. Days later, Walter filed a formal records request through the State Agricultural Finance Board, asking for any communication between Big Sky and the disaster relief administrators. Nearly 6 months passed before an answer arrived. Inside it sat the detail that changed everything. Big Sky had received an eligibility roster back in September, Walter's account listed by name. Not once had the bank passed that information along. An attorney based in Great Falls agreed to take the case that winter, a lawyer with a track record against agricultural lenders across the state. Formal suit followed in February, alleging Big Sky concealed relief eligibility and misapplied insurance funds owed toward debt reduction. Firm denial came from Big Sky's legal team. Full disclosure, they argued, existed somewhere in the loan documents, worded densely enough that no average borrower would catch it without help. Micah, meanwhile, grew withdrawn at school. Other kids had repeated something overheard about the Reyes Ranch heading toward foreclosure, and it followed him into the hallways more than once. Late one afternoon, Walter found his grandson sitting alone by the barn, and he simply sat down beside him and said nothing at all. A subpoena reached Big Sky's offices that March, Walter's attorney demanding every internal email connected to the disaster relief roster. Buried within the response were deleted message threads tied to 3 employees, a special assets officer named Dale Kerrigan among them. Every single deletion traced to the same date, the exact afternoon Walter had first called to complain. None of it aligned with any retention policy Big Sky had ever filed. Trial opened that June in Fergus County District Court. Judge Patricia Vance had spent 13 years on that bench, well known locally for spotting inconsistencies before either side even raised them. Kerrigan testified early, insisting under oath that no relevant emails had been deleted. Then, the IT audit trail reached the judge's desk. Directly, Judge Vance asked Kerrigan to explain why 3 employees erased identical threads within the same hour. Kerrigan faltered. He claimed he had no memory of it. Not one answer he gave withstood a second question. If a bank hiding help from a grieving widower makes your blood boil right now, hit subscribe. This channel exists for stories exactly like this one. Stay with me. Wire transfer documentation spread across the table in front of her. A forensic auditor named Samuel Okonkwo-Ride took the stand next, retained by the insurance company to trace every dollar of that $265,000. Methodically, he walked the court through exactly how the funds had been rerouted into categories the original loan agreement never listed, categories the insurer had never signed off on either. Composed and exact under cross-examination, his testimony didn't shift once. Attorneys on both sides went quiet during his testimony, the numbers speaking clearly enough on their own without much need for argument. Judge Vance took notes through every answer, occasionally asking Samuel to slow down and repeat a specific figure for the record. At one point, she asked him directly whether any legitimate reading of the loan agreement could justify the fees Big Sky had charged. Samuel answered simply that he'd looked for one and hadn't found it. By the time his testimony ended, even Big Sky's own legal team seemed to sense the direction this case was heading. Their cross-examination lasted only a few minutes, far shorter than anyone in the courtroom expected given how much rode on his numbers. Walter testified last of anyone. He spoke of Donna in the hayfield. He spoke of Micah alone by the barn, and the quiet that had settled between them, and the whispers that had followed his grandson to school. Once, only once, his voice caught, right on Donna's name, before he steadied himself and kept going, finishing exactly what he came there to say. Twice over, Judge Vance reviewed every exhibit, exactly as her reputation suggested she would. Court staff described her as unusually still that afternoon, flipping back through pages she'd already read once before. When she finally spoke, the courtroom went completely still. Improper, she called the fee structure outright. $72,000 reapplied to principal, interest included. Big Sky, she found, had knowingly withheld a relief program capable of saving the ranch entirely, a direct breach of good faith. State fines followed for Big Sky Agricultural Bank, $210,000 over the destroyed records. Dale Kerrigan was removed from his position within the week, and the bank's Special Assets Division underwent a full internal review before spring. Regulators outside the courtroom took notice too. State banking officials announced a broader review of Big Sky's disaster relief notification practices across every county the bank served, citing Walter's case directly as the reason the inquiry began. 2 other Fergus County ranchers came forward within weeks, describing fee disputes eerily similar to his own. Local news picked up the story within days, reporters calling Walter's attorney for comment on what one outlet described as one of the clearest documented cases of relief program concealment the state banking board had seen in years. Walter declined every interview request himself, letting his attorney speak on his behalf instead. Neighbors who'd faced similar struggles with Big Sky began reaching out to Walter directly, some for the first time sharing stories nobody had ever compared notes on before. A few admitted they'd assumed the fees were simply how banking worked now, never thinking to question them. Silence, not celebration, was how Walter marked the win. He settled the remaining balance, refinanced what was left, and kept the herd moving through summer grazing season without ever giving a single interview himself. Word spread through the county anyway, ranch to ranch, faster than he expected it to. That fall, 50 acres opened up for a youth ranching mentorship serving kids across Fergus County, an idea Walter had quietly floated to his son-in-law months before the ruling ever came down. Micah joined that winter, raising his own heifer calf, tracking her weight in a notebook he kept in his coat pocket everywhere he went. Other kids from town joined too, some whose families had never met Walter before that year. Local ranchers who'd stayed quiet during the trial started showing up on Saturday mornings anyway, helping Walter run the program without ever mentioning the case directly. Ellie, one of Micah's classmates, joined the program that spring alongside her own father, a man who'd once worked cattle for Big Sky's largest local competitor for over a decade. Word of the youth program reached the county extension office by early summer, officials reaching out to ask whether Walter would consider expanding it countywide the following year. He agreed, on one condition: no press, no attention drawn back to the case itself, just kids and cattle, and Saturday mornings, the way ranching had always worked in Fergus County. Micah's grades improved that semester too, teachers mentioning it to Walter without any prompting on his part. By the county town hall that October, the youth program had grown to include kids from 3 neighboring counties. All of it started from 50 acres and one man's decision not to let silence win twice. Front row that day sat Micah, beside his grandfather, clapping louder than anyone else in the building when Walter's name got mentioned from the podium. Walter never set out to become a story people talked about at county meetings. He just wanted his family's land protected. That's exactly what happened. And 50 acres of kids raising cattle every Saturday is proof it mattered. If your family's ever dealt with a bank that stayed silent when it should have spoken up, tell us below. We read every comment.